recognizing that the role that your staff plays isn't just accepting people's money
Right.
or running the attraction.
Hi, I'm Russ, and this is the Memory Makers Podcast, the show that helps you create amazing customer experiences and make more memories. All right, gang, no jingle today. I've been doing too much Bruno Mars adaptations with it, so we're going to jump right in because I am so excited for our episode. We are joined today by Mr. Paco Underhill. Paco, thank you so much for joining us. I will. We'll get into the man, the myth, the legend that is Paco. He is a global retail expert and strategic advisor. He has a wide-ranging expertise in studying stores and products, brands, websites, apps, all of this, airports, banks, hotels, museums, and not just all of those things, but he's done it in over 50 countries across the world. He's an author, a futurist, a professional speaker, an observer, and a humorist, transforming how organizations understand and connect with their customers. So, Paco, I'm so excited for us to jump in. But before we get into some of the nitty gritty of the episode, which is focusing on guest experience and your expertise in understanding behaviors, I'd love to know how you started down this path of being a student of human nature and how you turned that into a professional career.
Well, more than 50 years ago, I was part of the team that would go to different cities across the country, look at topography and traffic patterns, and rewrite commercial zoning ordinances.
Okay.
Russ, I had my moment of epiphany on the roof of the Seafirst Bank building in Seattle.
Okay.
On the roof, I was on the edge of the roof, 60 stories up, installing the time-lapse cameras to record the traffic patterns on the streets below. And Russ, there was a stiff wind blowing, and I could feel the building rocking in the breeze. You can't tell, but I'm 6'4" tall. I'm one of the few tall people I know that can make a joke that I can get height sick with 2 pairs of socks on. On the roof of that building with it rocking, I promised myself that I would reinvent what I did. A week later, I was standing in a bank in New York City, getting angrier by the moment, and realized that the same tools I'd been using to look at how a city worked, I could probably modify and look at commercial spaces.
Interesting.
And I started knocking on doors. I'd never taken a business course, never taken a marketing course, never worked in retail, but I knew a lot about understanding how people move. And one of the first jobs I got was working for Citibank, looking at one of the first installation of ATMs.
Yeah.
This was back in 1977. And I can remember the third day on the job in one of the branches, the branch manager came out of his office and started yelling at me. He said, "Paco, you moved the brochure rack, and we got rid of a month's worth of brochures in 3 days. How am I going to get more brochures?"
That's a good problem to have, Mr. Manager.
That's a good problem to have. And part of what fueled our work is that in spite of, our whatever, we could walk in to almost any retail or commercial space and often make very modest changes that had an immediate result. And in contrast to the McKinseys of the world who deal with strategy issues, part of what was really fun for us is we could come back and go, here are 10 things you could do this week. Here are 10 things you could do in 2 weeks. Here are 10 things to think about doing next month. And here are a series of strategic issues that maybe you should think about doing next year. That was one and then the second was that as we interacted with the creative community that designs, whether it's stores, websites, run hospitals, airports, is rather than going, 22% of people do this, we would go, 22% of people do this, but let's look at the videotape.
Mm.
And the ability to communicate an understanding of science and be able to match it to the art of design was something that was just very popular and telling. And we were able to, institute results. And, over 34 years, we work with more than a third of the Fortune 100 list.
That's fantastic. Well, and I love that mindset that you were mentioning, where we have to blend what is the data telling us on paper, but what does that actually look like in the wild? Because there can be a disconnect of between those two things. Sometimes it's human assumption, sometimes it's biases, sometimes it's just things that we've gotten nose blind to that can have an impact on how people are perceiving a venue. How is that shaping either friction or frustration levels that they may be having? And all of that has a significant impact on whether or not they feel comfortable and confident coming there again, spending more dollars. I mean, all of this is a huge, I always look at this is the thin end of a fat wedge, where all of a sudden the trajectory and the scope that this has an impact on from a single point of intentionality is so critical for guests to have a venue where when people are coming in, does it feel welcoming? Where are their natural sightlines and natural tendencies telling them to go? And do you have things there that are going to reinforce that and kind of align with it, or are you going to be swimming upstream against some of that? And I'm sure you see that quite a bit.
I think, Russ, part of what we also recognize is while there are a series of biological constants, things that don't change, okay, within the context of our physical behavior, part of what we know is whether we're talking about the design of a store, a home, a hospital, a website, there are a series of things that are in flux.
Mm.
The degree to which we recognize that design, whether it's physical or cyber, has to keep track of the evolution of us.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And do you find, and I bring this up because in one of your books, Why We Buy, you talk about how businesses can often misunderstand customer behavior. And some of that, I would imagine, stems from, hey, sometimes it's a staff thing, sometimes it's the facility itself. What is the intended goal or guest experience as they're moving through each of these things? Do we actually understand that and engineer it in a way that it will facilitate that? What are some of the modern examples of organizations that are still making some of those mistakes today, or easy things that start to unravel when we aren't anticipating customer behaviors when they're coming into our locations?
Well, if you think about, Russ, the top 10 retailers in the U.S. changes with every decade.
Mm.
And there are any number of people that are ascend and crash. And whether it's Sears, or whether it's Kmart, or whether it's Target that's struggling now. Some of it, I think, is often what I call the difference between thinking sitting down and thinking standing up. And one of the things that we know, particularly here in the US, is that if I find the desk farthest away from the front door, that's often where the person in charge sits.
Mm.
And I think one of the keys to success is getting closer to the front door and getting closer to understanding what the dynamics of your customer base are and what's changing and what stays the same.
Yeah. Well, and such a great example where if you are not keeping your finger on the pulse or seeing these things for yourself, it's easy to be insulated in a way and just not even aware that the problem is there. And so I love that mindset of keeping it more to the front and making sure that as a leader or a manager of a facility that you put yourself in positions to be able to see how that is actually translating and getting outside of, okay, how are the reports, and we're taking care of the time cards and all of that good stuff. Great. But ultimately the biggest needle mover is going to be our guests, having a good time and feel inclined to come back. And if we're not seeing where those breakdowns happen, it's much harder to affect positive change when you're not understanding and internalizing that?
I think there's a line which I use often, which is wars are won when generals get to the front.
That's an excellent one. I'm going to bring that. I'm going to borrow that moving forward, if you don't mind.
Okay, I'll sell it to you.
Okay. We'll talk friends and family discount here after the episode. When you and so one of the questions I had was, how can operators distinguish between what guests say they want and what their actions reveal? So, sometimes when we have customers, and it's interesting because sometimes, hey, if it's a new startup and they're thinking of opening a venue, they may have started going down the path of a feasibility study and starting to understand what market they're going into. But sometimes we have clients that are like, hey, we're opening a new attraction at our venue, or we're opening this new facility. What do you guys want to see? And sometimes those quick isolated polls on Facebook or kind of thing, like, it doesn't necessarily tell us a full picture. And so in some of that even translates further into, okay, we think, and food and beverage may be an example of this. A lot of our venues, hey, we want to have gluten-free or allergen-free or certain menu items that are on there, but it's, because it gets a lot of hype and we get a lot of feedback on it, but the data doesn't actually show that we're moving a lot of that type of a unit. So if you're working with a customer and are trying to understand, okay, what are we being told that the guests are saying that they want, but is that in alignment with what's actually happening? How do you start to peel back the layer of that onion?
Russ, can we play this a little differently?
Please.
Okay. First of all, let's look at the fact that in the 2020 census, one of the things that they recorded is less than 25% of American households have a mother, father, and dependent children in them. Okay? So part of what this means is that the television family of the 1950s, while it's certainly there and the suburbs have them, there's the actual definition of what is a family is actually under some transition. Part of what that means is that you have households where there is one parent, you have a divorced parent, where someone is both interacting with their kids Monday through Friday, but somebody else has the kids Saturday and Sunday. We have households where there are three generations living under the same roof. Part of what that means is that for an attraction like yours, having a parking lot for two-legged pets called a grandfather or a grandmother is often very critical. But it also starts a very interesting concept, which is that the experience of a family entertainment center starts and ends in the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, thinking about parking, thinking about that a percentage of customers arriving at your location are going to want to drop off, whether it's kids, a grandparent, or something at the front door, and then they go park their car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We also know that men generally have no creepy experiences in parking lots, but women do.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, lighting, other things that react to making the parking experience easier, faster, is really critical. Mm-hmm. Did you know that at many shopping malls in Korea, the prime parking spaces immediately around the front door are reserved for women only?
I did not know that. That's very interesting.
Or that in European parking lots, often they have recognized that the female driver has an easier time locating her car over a painted rectangle as opposed to between two stripes.
Oh, fascinating.
Okay. So that's sort of one piece, is thinking about parking and what the dynamics are.
Right.
And is what is the entrance pattern? And I think this is one of the things, having the last family entertainment complex I went to, was at the Natick Mall in Massachusetts. Okay.
Yeah.
And part of what was interesting here is that for everybody approaching the ticket office who knew exactly what they were doing, there were a bunch of people who had no idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think one of the things that we're looking at, and I think this is, again, issue number one that is in flux, is that the relationship between the physical and cyber world is getting fuzzier and fuzzier.
Absolutely. Well, and it's such a trend these days, especially with our types of clients, entertainment venues, that I harp on is one. I agree that what that walk from, how do we get to the parking lot? Do we feel comfortable and safe as we're moving through there? But if they're looking for somewhere to go, it starts on their phone. And what is that guest experience, and how are you positioned of like, is it fluid and is it designed for mobile use and things? But not only that, do they have the ability to start booking and dropping in their experiences into the cart before they even get there? And we found that folks that are going down that path, whether it's booking your bowling lane online in advance, but now it's the same thing of let's book your laser tag, let's book your go-karting session, let's do all of these other things. Because if you've got somebody that's, you know, in spinning all of their plates and they can't have heads or tails of what all there is to do, like giving them that option to start crafting the experience before they've walked through the door helps, I would imagine, greatly with once they're in the venue, they're not deer in the headlights quite as much because there's so much that's going on in those venues with lighting and sound and distractions. Everything's trying to grab your attention. It can be like drinking from the fire hose. And so priming that engine before you're even in the building, I feel like is a major impact that we have to be getting more into a click and mortar type of a model as opposed to, you know, just the brick and mortar aspect.
Two things here.
Yeah.
First of all, is for that customer arriving for the first time. One of the things, Russ, that the internet world is struggling with is the difference between the 30-year-old who is completely tech literate and is coming with their children versus the 65-year-old who has lots of money in their pocket, is coming with their grandchildren, but whose tech literacy is nowhere near as facile. Okay?
Yeah.
And therefore understanding that in terms of the first-time visitor. But second, Russ, is that one of the keys to a family entertainment center is once having seduced you the first time, okay, is making it easier for you to come back the second, third, fourth, and fifth, which means that one of the tasks that you have is once you got somebody in the door, offering them a education on how to interact with you online at your next visit and be able to streamline what that process is. And that is one of the ways that you set the hook.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's not just about the first visit, it's about the 7th, 8th, or the 10th visit.
Absolutely. Well, and when we look at some of the things like the IAPA industry report, and they survey everybody from Disney and Universal all the way through mom and pop's go-kart emporium in Paducah, Kentucky. But some of the benchmark survey and reporting that they bring in there is like, hey, on average for traditional family entertainment centers, you're seeing an average visit of 2.6, I think is what it is. So somewhere between 2 to 3 on average. And what we always try to say is, look, the difference between average and phenomenal, it's like if we can get a certain percentage of those people that are more inclined to go twice, if we can get one more visit, and in each of those 3 visits, if we can get a small percentage increase in their per cap spend by being really aligned and positioned to serve them well, it now all of the sudden, one, you get the compounding effect of those two things working in tandem together, but the cost of acquisition for those visits is dramatically less expensive once you've gotten them into the groove of coming back again and again, and you have more advocates for that. And so that's a huge, a piece where all of a sudden we're playing chess and not checkers when we can start getting into that math in our favor.
Okay, Russ, that sort of brings up, I think, issue number 2. Okay. And this is, I think, in the broader world of commercial interaction, a really interesting one. And whether I'm talking about someone coming to a family entertainment center, someone coming to a shopping mall, someone coming online, is that one of the things that we know in our post-pan world is that I can stand at the doorway or watch somebody enter online and tell you how loud the clock is ticking inside someone's head.
Fascinating. What are some of the things that start to jump out at you when you're looking at
And
that?
some of it is what the way they move, but also recognize that someone may be coming to one of your facilities first with no idea of time. I'm here to spend as long a time as I want to. It may be something else where, I'm going to the center at the Natick Mall. My wife and my daughter are shopping for prom dresses.
Mm-hmm.
I have roughly an hour, and how do I use that hour as well as I can?
Yeah.
And that understanding that there are visits that are going to be endless, and there are visits that are basically based on somebody's perception of how much time do I have, and when do I have to get in, and when do I have to get out.
Right. Well, and that I think as well, when we talk with folks about even just how they're operating and staffing their attractions of, hey, it's the benefits of having some of these things like early reservations or booking things before you even step in. Not only does it have great implications for, hey, we can anticipate what our traffic is more likely to be and how do we staff that, and do we need to call in some additional bodies if all of a sudden something's looking much busier. But by having your attractions scheduled and running, one, you're increasing the throughput and the capacity of the number of guests that you can service because you're not leaving dead time that's out there. But
That's
we
right.
have some folks then that then are like, well, hey, if we do have somebody that's just that walk in and is looking for something and everything else, well, now we also have a really great time of, hey, you're interested in doing a go-kart session. Our next 2 races are booked. The earliest one that we have is this one here. I can get you in there. And if they are more focused on what the time is because they have an exit that they have to make and based on the schedule, now all of a sudden, hey, if that's not immediately available for me, I can quickly get to something else or pivot to another piece that would be available for me right now. And so they're feeling more seen and heard and appreciated, and you would have no way of knowing that, but by having that infrastructure in place now, you can flex to, hey, if you're coming in, great, we'll get you in this one, or you can start to curate or Sherpa what the experience is for them that aligns with what they're looking for.
Well, some of it is also recognizing that the role that your staff plays isn't just accepting people's money
Right.
or running the attraction, but helping people understand, what it is that they're going to do, and often recognizing that one of the pleasures, particularly for the person who's picking up, isn't their interaction, but watching somebody else interact with what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you find that when you're helping a firm kind of evaluate this, is it some of it stemming from, hey, we just don't know what we don't know. We're kind of doing what we see other people do, but they don't know what is actually good about that thing that they're implementing, or maybe has drawbacks for the context that they're in. And where and how do you start to try to shed light on that to give them good questions or filters to start viewing things through?
Well, I think I'm going to answer that question differently. Okay.
Please.
Okay. First of all, one of the things that we find critical is what are the things that are decided at corporate headquarters?
Mm-hmm.
What are the things that are decided at regional? And what are the things that are decided on site by the manager and staff?
Mm-hmm.
And the degree to which there's an understanding of all of those constituent pieces, I think is a really critical part to existing nationally across the US. And part of what this means is for someone like you who is supplying or designing or whatever, is being able to coach, particularly those family operators who may be doing one site, but there's the difference between where is the owner who's not on site versus where is the manager who is on site, versus the assistant manager that's there on Tuesday as opposed to the manager that's there on Saturday afternoon.
100%. And then you know what's so funny? And regardless of, okay, we may be a national brand with 50 locations across the country that runs into that, a single store with an owner who is not there, not present, or a team that is not critically communicating and sharing their understandings and having somebody that can work on the business and keep tabs on all of these individual nodes and components that are going into it. As soon as you have that disconnect, I find that a lot of locations will have friction with, okay, frontline employees don't feel like what they're seeing or trying to fix are getting up to the ears that are going to give them the bandwidth to actually start implementing it. And so to your point of the wars get won when the generals are at the front, again, it's irrelevant to size and scale, and you have to have a connection to what is actually happening in the business. And so when we even do things like our Amusement 360 event, you get folks that are considering opening up their first venue, or you have someone that's considering even opening up a second venue. It's how are you going to stay involved regularly on and manage your time, both with stewarding the culture and reinforcing and developing your leaders to make sure that your vision and what that North Star is actually translating to. But man, it can get sideways really fast because you just are not and it's just a natural human tendency of, okay, it's out of sight, it's out of mind. But one of the things that I tell folks is this is one of the best industries. But if you're coming from a normal 9-to-5 job or a salaried position or something else, and you're wanting to be your own boss, if you're not prepared to be working a lot more hours because you need to wear the hat of the owner and working on the strategic vision, you need to wear the hat of, making sure that the finances are doing what they need to do. You need to make sure, like, you have to be in a lot more places as a solopreneur, operating this. And so if this is something like, hey, we want to add this because we think it's a good business venture, but we're going to hire somebody and they're going to really run point on it. We're going to be over here to the side and let it bank. Like, I can almost guarantee you that there's going to be a significant difference in the earning of those businesses of somebody who's showing up regularly and actually inspecting what they're expecting, as opposed to letting somebody else just put it on autopilot. I
would agree. I think there is the third issue. We talked about the internet. We talked about time. Mm-hmm. I think one of the other issues, which is really poignant, is gender.
Tell me more.
Well, this is the recognition, for example, that men don't have creepy experiences in a parking lot. Women do. Mm-hmm. Men don't talk about restrooms. Women do. Mm-hmm. One of the things that has both been very positive and occasionally has gotten me in trouble, taking the male managers and walking them into the women's restroom and going, this is a guerrilla marketing opportunity, and being able to take care of it is really critical. I can remember going to Walmart for my first time in the early 1990s and standing in front of their board and going, I can walk in to 10 different Walmarts and be able to tell you pretty quickly the one Walmart where the manager is female.
Mm. And what was that indicator for you?
Well, first of all, looking at restrooms. Mm-hmm. Second was looking at the dressing room. And third was looking at how clean the cosmetic section is.
Yeah.
Because women's radar for stuff like that and men's radar is often very different. And I think that is, again, given the nature of your family entertainment, mm-hmm. is understanding what the potential things that might turn somebody off.
Yeah.
And one of them is cleanliness.
Absolutely. Well, and it was interesting, particularly in a post-pan world, when we look at, I think it got everybody a little bit more dialed in, just because as we were opening in the later stages of COVID and venues were opening back up, like, hey, you'd have an urban air location or something that would turn on music and have a cleaning party now all of a sudden to wipe down arcade games and do different things. And so they kind of almost turned this bug into a feature of, hey, we have to we have to show people that we are actively taking the steps and making it a spectacle, and also making it a fun participatory dance party. We're doing a couple of things. One, we're following good guidelines and we're keeping things clean in that time. But two, we're gamifying or creating it in some sort of entertainment aspect. But moms and that we're seeing that it was one of the biggest things that you would see on reviews and Yelp reviews and everything else was, I not only was I thrilled that they were regularly cleaning things and I could see that in real time and being action, but it also made it fun and took us, it didn't distract, because when people are coming to our venues, it's to celebrate or escape, right? They're either celebrating a birthday party, or they're doing looking to blow off a little bit of steam, or they're looking to escape from some of the everyday stresses and all of the things that come with that. And so by taking something as benign as regularly scheduled cleaning breaks, and now turning that into an experience that can be kind of collaboratively shared in, emotionally, can have a huge impact on guests. And we saw that in the message boards.
Russ, I can remember working for a Mexican grocery store chain who made what I thought was a very interesting decision, is that rather than doing all of the store cleaning after the store was closed, they would move some of the cleaning to the actual shopping day, where shoppers in the store could watch somebody wiping down the glass faces of the refrigerator, and their cleaning costs stayed the same, but their marks for cleaning went up dramatically.
Do you imagine that? So I'm just trying to put myself in the shoe of somebody. So if I'm walking in and going to the grocery store and I see that there's something that's a little untidy or needs a little bit of cleanliness, I would imagine, or my hallucination would be, okay, if I'm taking that step and I see nobody around that's doing anything like that, I'm not seeing any busy worker bees doing other things, that's going to slate my interpretation of what that cleanliness is, versus I'm walking in, I see that, but I see them all, someone else cleaning somewhere else. It's like, oh, well, I know that they're actively working on this. They most likely just haven't gotten to this thing yet. And so it doesn't feel as abandoned. It feels more like a stewarded, intentional part of the guest experience at that point.
I think that's absolutely correct.
Interesting. Okay, well, tell my wife that. I need some brownie points. I don't get to be right very often. It's the hazards of marrying up. She's much smarter than I am, so.
Well, I have a Turkish wife here, so
Mm-hmm.
I get some pushback for the things that I do and the things that she thinks I should do here.
Sure. Well, it helps us get a little better every day. When you're looking at, a family entertainment center is kind of an odd collection of, the vast majority of locations will have some food and beverage. Sometimes it'll be sit down and a higher end, experience. Sometimes it's fast casual. There's also the entertainment aspect. There's also a little bit of retail aspect that comes into it with the redemption games and the toys and those kinds of things. Are there any interesting trends that you're seeing in how customers are perceiving, and maybe even by certain age demographics or gender or kind of sub demographic groups? What are some interesting things that you're seeing out in the wild these days across those types of businesses?
Well, I think one of the things is recognizing that, first of all, is how do you do a better job of getting local?
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that if you have a facility in El Paso, Texas, and you have a facility in Duluth, Minnesota, there are some predictable, dietary issues about people coming in. That's normal. Second is recognizing that one of the trends going on in the broader world of restaurants is people wanting to get healthier.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and being able to offer healthy local options. Okay, and they don't need to cost more money, but they're just I again looking at the offering and being able to make some judgment calls there. I'd be very careful about fast food chains.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This
Yeah.
means I again, the issue of how do I do a better job of getting local and understanding what local preferences are as opposed to national trends.
Yeah. Do you find what looking at that from a food and beverage standpoint and looking at some of those healthier options that you may want to do, are there if you had somebody that said, "Hey, we're getting ready to take a new look at our menu," where would be some starting points for them to start gathering good information like that? Or is it surveying the guests as they come through of, hey, what would be new things that you'd like to see on the menu? Or is it doing some test rotational pieces and kind of experimenting and tinkering and that way it's, hey, we do have this kind of nice rotation of items that could be healthier and locally sourced, and then if something really takes off, we know we can maybe put that more as a permanent fixture on the menu. How would you start to tackle that if that were you?
I just first of all is understanding the market that you serve, understanding something about the ethnic ranges, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Understanding something about what's going on in the immediate vicinity of where your facility is, and being able to borrow some of those issues.
Mm-hmm. No, it makes a lot of sense. Well, and so I was just having a conversation with one of our industry consultants, and we're talking about kind of birthday parties, and he was like, "Hey, I noticed on this call you were talking with the client about how the average birthday party is 10 to 11." He's like, "That's great on a national average," but he goes, "You get into the Southwest and more Latino neighborhoods and populaces, like the average birthday party for them is actually closer to 16 to 18 because it's a larger family piece." And so it's just the national averages are great in a snapshot, but they very rarely tell you the full picture, right? And so it's like, let's actually look at what the bell curve is as opposed to averages when it comes to stuff like this, because there's a range and a spectrum and so much variety that can come in there. Do you find that if someone is looking to do that and they start going down and hey, we're going to do a market study and we're going to do some feasibility, is there still is there a better substitute for actually making sure that you're actually getting boots on the ground time and seeing what other successful venues are doing and really trying to analyze that? Like, in my mind, there's no, it's a leading question, but I just have yet to find a substitute for that. Like, yes, we need the input and we need the data, but we also need to see that in practice to see what how is that actually becoming something that's meaningful? Is it a law of nature, or is it something that it transcends what the data is saying?
I think one of the key aspects to running retail, okay, is looking at all of the different sources of information that you have. You have the stuff that's coming off your cameras. You have the stuff where you're talking to people. You have the feedback that you're getting from your staff, and none of them will all tell you exactly the same thing. One of the skill sets that we have is being able to look at multiple sources of information and process them together.
I love that. Yes. Yeah. How do we holistically bring this together and have multiple perspectives on it too, right? It's easy to not, if I'm a male entrepreneur and I'm looking to open a center and I'm walking the site and thinking, hey, this is going to be great, but then to your point where I'm not thinking about the lighting in that parking lot the same way unless I have somebody else or I've had experiences with someone else that is a need. And so it's not necessarily a bad thing to not have that at the front of your mind, but how are we coming to the table and making sure that we have these different perspectives there from the start to ensure that it's really cohesive?
Right.
I love that. Well, Paco, I have enjoyed this thoroughly. I am confident that we are going to need to do additional episodes to start, continue to go down these rabbit holes. Before I let you go, I was curious if after spending a lifetime and studying how people are shopping and eating and gathering and interacting with the world around them, is there any one lesson that jumps out to you that folks should remember when designing moments that matter?
I think we go back to my opening remarks, which is understanding the difference between thinking sitting down and thinking standing up. And both of
Absolutely.
them are valuable for all of the time that we spend staring into our screens, staring into our phones. That we also need to have realize that we live in an analog world, and
Yeah.
having, standing up and going to take a real look and doing some real listening.
I love that. Well, and it to me is what makes our industry so special because again, we can have all of these high fidelity and high tech infused offerings and gizmos and gadgets that go. But if one thing coming out of COVID taught us is that we are a tribal people by nature who come together in groups of people to celebrate or escape. And if we are the vehicle that can happen, we need to make sure that we're doing a really good job allowing them to connect together that way. I love
Good
it.
for you, Russ. Good
I,
for you, Russ.
well, thank you again, Paco, so much for joining us and your insights and your expertise. I look forward to us having more conversations in the future. Thank you all for joining us on this episode. If you liked what you heard, we always appreciate that 5-star review. Please and thank you if we've earned it. And if you have ideas or content or other folks that you want to see on the podcast, hit us up on social media and we'll be more than happy to get that into the mix. Otherwise, check us out wherever you get your episodes weekly, and we will catch you on the next one, Troublemakers.